Next up is Nadya Peak with the MakeItSo team.
Hello, everyone. Okay, so science starts from questions like, what's at the bottom of that pond? Or why does this yeast grow? Or how are we going to get these cells to die and not kill these other cells? And when you ask questions, you want to get answers. And the way that you do it is experiments, right? But then if you want to do experiments, you need to do them quite precisely, because if you don't do them precisely, then you can't get the same answer over and over again. And then it turns out you didn't actually answer your question. That's a problem. So where do we get that precision? Machines have precision, but machines aren't super accessible, and they're kind of annoying to program. Not everyone has them. So that's kind of the point that we started from. How do we have machines to give access to precision to be able to do experiments? In particular, we want to understand how to go from a task to data. And a lot of the times, especially if you're a scientist, the way that you do this is by any means possible. You have like a grad student who's in the middle of the night pipetting something. You're like, I'm just going to do this. I have no other way to make this happen. And what kind of ends up lying by the wayside is the infrastructure that enables you to do those experiments. So how do you actually make it easier to do the experiment in the first place? How do you make the software and the hardware that makes the automation of those kinds of experiments possible? We're a team from the University of Washington. I am Nadya Peak. I'm an assistant professor, and I direct a lab called Machine Agency, which is about the precision of machines and the agency of individuals. And I'm joined by my PhD students, Hannah Twigg-Smith and Joshua Vasquez. They're over here in the front row. Joshua is a Harvey Mudd trained engineer who previously worked at Synthago, synthesizing DNA, and Hannah is an Olin-trained engineer previously from SolidWorks and Google. And we, together, using the tool Foundry seed money, developed this hardware platform that we called Jubilee. Jubilee is a multi-tool machine, so you can move around in X, Y, Z space, and you can change out the beds, and it can pick up and drop off different heads. So for example, you could start with a 3D print head, 3D print a 96 weld plate, and then pipette liquids into the weld plate, and then pick up a microscope and look at what happened with it. The crucial part about it is that each one of these heads can be picked up and dropped off really repeatably. Uh-oh. So here, for example, is our microscope head. Because of the coupling that we used, after you first install a tool on the machine, you can always pick it up in exactly the same location. So if you do something and then you want to go look at it, you don't have to calibrate the machine again in between steps. And so here, for example, we use the microscope to do gigapan microscopy of the surface of this coin. We developed a syringe. We've developed a syringe head, which we can use for bulk liquid transfer, which is good for dilution series. So here you can see dilution series in this 96 well plate. You can pick up several different syringes depending on how many you install on the tool. And we also built 3D print heads. And being able to pick up and drop off multiple 3D print heads at the same time is cool, because then you can do multi-material 3D printing. For example, you could print a conductor and an insulator, so you could do 3D circuits. Or you could print a water-soluble support material because you wanted to use your part for something in particular. Or you could print multicolored cats. And there's something, okay, so we can pick up and drop off things. We have design objectives that we met, which is just precise sensing and actuation, right? We want to measure things and we want to be able to actuate them. But for MakeItSo, one of the main things that we're interested in is how scientists answer these questions. And so to be able to make sure that they have access to this kind of tool, we want to make sure that the infrastructure is accessible to them. And so the particular brief that we gave ourselves was, we need to make something that is fabricatable, or something that people can build using the tools that they have access to. And it needs to be clear enough for them to, it needs to be well documented enough so that it is actually possible for people who aren't machine design experts to be able to replicate this work. And it needs to be modular and extensible, because we don't know all of the different kinds of heads and tools people are going to be using in these systems. And so if those parts don't work out, then even though we can do all of these kinds of crazy machine things, Manu, geez, then it's no worries. And so a big important part of it was, is our machine replicatable by other people? So we released it as open source, kind of halfway through the tool Foundry period after we did the initial design of it. We have now, and we started a Discord channel. We have 200 plus active community members in our Discord channel. We have 10 plus confirmed sites of other places that are building Jubilee, people that we're not actively helping, and a bunch of GitHub forks and stars and other GitHub stuff. And in fact, the user Denal, who we've never met, has successfully already replicated a whole machine since we've released it. This is someone we have never talked to. They just used the documentation and the design files that we released on GitHub and was able to make this machine. Now, the machine is cool. But we have to get back to asking questions, like what are the applications that this enables? I think that the real value is in precision, so you have reproducible experiments. But actually, being able to use multiple tools in a single machine also enables you to ask different kinds of questions. I can now do sensing and actuation in one workflow environment. And so now I can start closing feedback loops there. Instead of just saying, I'm going to pipette this liquid into place, I can pipette the liquid into place, then take the microscope and look at it, wait for the Petri dish to turn pink, and then start shaking it, or whatever it is that you want to automate with it. And that, I think, is a kind of experiment that we can only really develop in collaboration with domain experts, people who are trying to figure out how to answer these questions. And so that's, we also wanted to be able to collect lots of data, store it in different ways, share data between different machines. These are all things that we thought are important and possible, but we want to collaborate with domain experts to make this happen. So the first collaboration that we started in the second half of the accelerator was with a chemical engineering group. This chemical engineering group is interested in chemical mixtures that can make up deep eutectic solvents, which are good high-capacity battery storage chemicals. But you have to figure out what the optimal mixture is. And so what you can do is mix lots of chemicals and then measure all of them and then eventually figure it out after you've done all of the measurements. But what we're actually trying to do with them is do a feedback loop where we mix chemicals, take measurements, and then given the outcomes of the measurements that we take, then decide what we're going to do next, what we're going to measure next as a kind of online learning. Another collaboration that we just started is with a synthetic biology group. They're using duckweed. Duckweed is apparently cool because you can genetically modify it so that it makes chemicals. And so you have to make sure that you pick out the duckweed that is being successful. So we're using MakeItSo to look at successful duckweed and pick it up and put it in a Petri dish and continue growing it. And I think that there are many other applications that could happen next. So for us, next steps are really about how are we going to develop these kinds of science experiments where we can start using data-driven insights to be able to design experiments that give us more insight. So we're interested in further collaborations like that. And then we also want to continue iterating on fabricatability. Denal made the machine, but we're really interested in figuring out what the accelerators and the hurdles are of open source hardware that enables people to make machines like this and start answering a lot of the questions that they have, especially science questions. We're demoing downstairs. We have a lot of different heads that we will be moving around, and if you come by sooner, maybe we'll print you a cat. Thank you.